Welcome back to another GTN Coach's Corner where we answer your questions. In this week's episode, does your salt level fluctuate in your sweat depending on your diet?
All right, and fueling for a full versus a half.
And how to carry that fuel on your half or your full.
Yeah, and cramping. How do you recover from it, and can it cause an injury?
Right, let's jump straight into your questions. First one from Edwin Rager says, hashtag GTN Coach's Corner. How do you recommend training the fueling strategy for a full Ironman? I've already done 5 70.3s and a marathon, and I got good at understanding my body and its fueling needs for those distances. But I don't really think that I can extrapolate that fueling strategy for an 11+ hour event. On those events, I've only used gels, and I'm afraid that I'll get sick after about 8 gels. Any tips?
It's good you're questioning this because, you are right. You probably don't want to just extrapolate. And the fueling strategy should differ because also the intensity is quite different.
Yeah, it's significantly low, which means there's a lot more margin for error and room for more solid fuels, etc. You also, there's much more chance of you feeling feelings like hunger that you need to stave off. And again, solid food is the answer to that. So we would suggest that you do add in some solid fuels like energy bars, chews, whatever you can tolerate, whatever you feel like, on top of the gels. Don't completely do away with the gels. In fact, most of your calories should probably be from gels so that you are confident that's not going to mess up your stomach. But break that up with things that you do like or will look forward to, like a really nice energy bar that you particularly fancy, that you can take halfway through the bike and maybe 3/4 or further on, just to take away that feeling of hunger and also take a break from those energy gels. One thing you do have to be aware of though, when you do it slowed down and you do have the opportunity to eat a bit more, you need to be as wary of overdoing it on the calories as you have to be of underdoing it on the calories.
Yeah, you've probably found through your 70.3s, you've been striving to take on more and more calories, more and more grams of carbs per hour. You'll have to dial that down slightly. If you're still striving for 100 grams of carbs per hour, but you're racing at a lower intensity, you are going to feel rather unwell further on into that event. So, I mean, loosely speaking, maybe start dialing it down. Say you were up around that area, maybe coming down to around 60 grams of carbs per hour. But also it's something you can actually try out in some of your training sessions in the build up to the event. Yeah,
we'd suggest you start at around 60 grams per hour, 240 calories or so per hour. And if you tolerate that, absolutely fine. Build it up a little bit until you get to the 360 calories an hour or 90 grams of carbs an hour or so. And any more than that, proceed with caution because that might come back to bite you on the run leg.
Nice. All right, next question from Paulie14. Does the sodium content of your sweat fluctuate with diet changes? Also, during a long endurance effort, Ironman distance, does the sodium content of your sweat increase, decrease, or remain the same?
That is an interesting question. And I actually read this and I thought, I'm not sure I know the answer to that. So we put a phone call into our friends at Precision Fuel and Hydration, and they sent us this answer.
Well, that is a very good question. Does your sweat sodium change with dietary sodium intake? And in 2018, some researchers down in Australia, a guy by the name of Alan McCubbin, wrote a paper on this very topic. He looked at 6 studies that had evaluated the impact of dietary salt intake on sweat sodium, and the findings were actually relatively inconclusive. Some of the studies suggested that dietary sodium might impact sweat sodium a bit, others didn't. And the main conclusion that they drew was that more research was needed to understand this. My personal take on it, based on the testing and repeat testing that we've done, is that any impact that dietary sodium intake has on sweat sodium loss is relatively minimal. In terms of how sweat sodium is affected throughout the course of a long distance triathlon, again, this is an area where we don't have a lot of concrete information. We've taken sweat samples from people before and after races and seen very little difference. So our inference would be that sweat sodium perhaps doesn't change so much throughout the course of a race, but there are factors that we know could influence it. For example, sweat rate. The faster you sweat, the more you sweat, the higher your sweat sodium concentration tends to be. And also, as you get dehydrated, as your plasma volume in your blood decreases, the pool of electrolytes there becomes more concentrated, which could show up as more concentrated sweat. I think we'll learn a lot more about that in the coming years as wearable sweat sensors become more common and we're able to track sweat sodium in real time through long distance activities.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that. Right, next question from Mex Triathlete 24. After many sprint triathlons, I'm upping the distance to an Olympic triathlon. My nutrition for these triathlons have been pretty simple. ISO drink on the bike. For the Olympic triathlon, I'm planning on taking on the same ISO drink plus 2 gels. My question is, how should I carry the gels on my road bike? I don't have a bento box, nor my trisuit have back pockets. Thank you very much.
Well, sounds like a good increase. 2 gels instead of just ISO drink is probably a good idea for your Olympic distance. How you carry them, kind of up to you. You could just take them to your top tube, just a little bit of tape around the real top tab of that gel so that it lies there, and you can actually just pull the gel open at the same time you pull it off. And then you've got an open gel in your hand. Don't litter. Put it in your pocket afterwards or down your trisuit. Take it to the finish. You don't want to be disqualified for littering. The other option, and it's a pretty good option, particularly if you are fairly confident in how much you're going to drink, is to decant the gels into your bottle. So if you have a 750 ml bottle on your frame, you can put 2 or even 3 gels inside that with your energy drink or even just with water. And that's got all the calories you need. As long as you finish that by the end of the bike, you've got all the calories and the hydration you need. The only difficulty with this, of course, is if it's a significantly colder day than you thought it was going to be, and you don't want to drink all of that fluid, or it's a significantly hotter day and you down all of that fluid in the first half of the bike, you've got nothing left for the second half. So you do have to weigh that up and take note of that and make sure you don't ruin your hydration plan while you're trying to nail your calorie plan. But if you can, that is the easiest way to do it, to have your nutrition in one bottle.
The other option is, if you don't want to faff around with tape or putting it into bottles, is simply in T1, grab the gels and shove them down your suit. If you've got a nice tight suit, they might just stay up in the shoulder area. The risk is, obviously, it could start slipping down. And I have known people to try and do this before the swim, thinking, oh, when I get onto the bike, they'll be right there. And actually, they're down here somewhere. So maybe something to try out. But I actually did it at the weekend. I grabbed my gels in transition and just chucked them in the front of the trisuit.
That's what you're doing when you stick your hand down your suit, Mark.
Anyway, moving on. Joe Jordan, 401. Hello, I've just completed my first Olympic distance for many years. Was building up with a sequence of sprint events. In the second half of the swim, my right leg cramped up. I tried to stretch it out in the water and made sure to take it easy on the bike and finish all the electrolytes I brought, and the run was actually fine. However, the leg is still sore a few days later when going upstairs, etc. And I'm worried how long it will take to recover. I have another Olympic in 8 weeks. I want to be able to execute the training I've planned, but I don't want to turn this into an injury. Is there anything I can do to prevent this? Should I be swigging electrolytes with my coffee an hour before the race?
Well, unlike the rest of our questions, this one actually isn't a nutrition question, really, because if you're cramping in the swim that early in the race, it's almost certainly not an electrolyte problem. It's very unlikely that you've set your electrolytes way out of whack.
You say this.
That early
you
in
say
the day.
this. It's actually something that I struggled with for many years, and because I do have a very high sodium content in my sweat, and if I really messed up my hydration the days prior to the event, I would feel it.
You're doing the camel thing where you're trying to hydrate in the 3 days before, and instead you just flushed all the electrolytes out of your system. Yeah, smart one, Mark. Don't do that.
Don't do that,
yeah,
exactly.
But also, cramping in the swim is often caused by a neuromuscular thing where you're holding your body in a position where it's just not used to. You're holding your calf or something in a position it's not used to, and it cramps up. It's also often caused by cold water. So the second part of your question is obviously, if you have cramped, clearly you managed to turn it around and actually run fine, which again makes me think that it almost certainly wasn't an electrolyte issue. The second part of your question is this an injury? Can I turn this into an injury? And the truth is that actually cramps don't really damage the muscle. It's a bit like you've done a really hard strength session on that muscle. It's going to be stiff. It's going to be sore. It's going to have worked really hard to the point that it's sore the next day or the next few days. But there isn't actually an underlying damage. And obviously, the pain is there for a reason, so listen to the pain. But you don't need to worry about this being a long-term injury or turning it into a running injury. You just need to slowly get the blood flowing through that area again to get all that cramp byproducts out of that, and you'll be absolutely fine. That muscle has not suffered any.
Yeah, I think the only time that you might cause damage is if the cramp comes on during a run and you're really trying to push through it. But if I'm honest, when that cramp comes on, you're probably not going to be able to run anyway, so you're going to stop pretty quickly.
They're pretty much self-limiting, cramps are. As far as preventing that early morning in the swim cramp, the best thing you can do is, as we said, don't flush your electrolytes out in the days before, trying to do the camel thing and store up 3 liters of water. Your body can't store water. If you are rehydrating or making sure you're well hydrated in the days leading up, make sure you are having electrolytes, an isotonic drink the whole time. And then do a decent warm-up. And when I say decent warm-up, it means everything, not just a few swings of your arms before you get in the water, because your legs also need to warm up. You essentially need to get the blood flowing all over your body before you go for the swim. That often means going for a 15-20 minute jog to warm up for the swim, which seems counterproductive because you want to save those running muscles for later on. But as long as you keep it easy, it actually warms you up a lot better for that swim than just swinging your arms.
Nice one. Well, that is all the questions for today. Please keep them coming in using the hashtag GTN Coaches Corner. You can drop them in the comment section below this video or any other video, and we'll pick them up, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Happy training.